You are listening to an exclusive interview on Bass Musician Magazine. The interview starts now.
Okay, hey, Vaughn here with Bass Musician, and I have with me an excellent bass musician. And he's also one of, honestly, my oldest music business buddies in the world, going back to about age 6, I think. Indeed, this is Dave Ellefson. And David is, of course, not just a bass player in a band that you've heard of called Megadeth, but Dave has been an amazing musician in lots of different projects, wore lots of different hats. Would you agree with that?
I would. You probably know me because you and I grew up in the same little town in Jackson, Minnesota together, and grew it through. We're all in the same school. There's only one. We grew up together, essentially. You knew me as the kid probably taking organ lessons on my mom's Wurlitzer organ, then picking up the tenor saxophone in 5th grade for the orchestra band, and then picking up the bass guitar and getting in bands with our friend Greg Hanovitt, and then playing in jazz band and orchestra band all the way up through high school, and then ironically you chose to go to Nashville, which isn't the Nashville we know today. It was just kind of a podunk little town. They had 2 kinds of music, country and western, as we know. And then I went off to Hollywood to go be a rock star, and here we are all these years later, sitting in Nashville. Yeah. I'm making a rock and roll record. Megadeth is largely based out of here now. We've made records here. Our operation's based here. And you were the one maybe ahead of the curve, looking at Nashville as the cool place to be, and it turns out you were right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, several million people have moved to Nashville since I came, which means that obviously it was all me.
You were a trendsetter.
So we are talking mostly today about something you're doing called BASSTORY. And we're going to have some links to the website and where you can look at tickets and stuff like that. But I want to start out with a bass story, and it's about you.
Okay.
So we're going to see if I get it right or not.
Okay.
Because this is going all the way back to.
I'll fact check.
Yeah, we'll see. For what it's worth, I would have taken better care of my brain cells if I would have known I was going to need them this long. You know what I mean? But this is going all the way back to, I'm going to say 9th grade, and jazz band. And now, okay, here's the first one. If I remember right, your first bass was an EBO?
It was Gibson EBO.
EBO through a Fender Music Master bass or something like that?
It was a Fender, you're right. I can't remember the
a 112
name.
combo.
It might have been a Music Master.
I think it was a Music Master bass.
Right,
and
check.
And then, okay, good. And then you got what I thought was, I mean, you got to remember, for those of you out there who don't know, Jackson, Minnesota during this time, I mean, we didn't really have access to things like cool amps and cool instruments. And I mean, there were like 3 fuzz pedals that floated around between all of us back in those days. You know what I mean? It's like, but somehow or another you got, and let's see if I got it right. I know it was a BC Ridge, but I think it was a Mockingbird bass.
It was, yes.
Okay, yes, I got it right.
The longhorn version. They had a short horn and a longhorn. Yeah, I got the longhorn. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is the Mockingbird bass making its first appearance in my world anyway. I don't know how long you had it. And this is a jazz band in 9th grade. Mm-hmm. And I guess you had just gotten it because I hadn't seen it before, but we were doing a little show in the whatever it was at the time. We actually had an auditorium in high school. Yeah. And there was a bass solo. Mm-hmm. And before that, you had been playing the EBO, you know, one pickup, a real woolly, woofy tone or whatever. And now it's like, I don't know what you did, honestly. I just remember it's like I couldn't think after you played this solo because it was like both pickups with a lot of phase cancellation going on, and it was really thin and punchy. Yeah. So, got all of it right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. No, thank you. And it's funny, that bass solo, people bring that up to me when they saw me play that solo. A lot of our friends.
It was mind-bending.
So. I guess it was. It was, especially for the jazz band, because I was the rock and roll guy, and I'm coming out, I guess, shredding a bass solo that seem to have made an impact on people, which is cool.
Well, there were two times early on in those high school years that it became painfully obvious to me that you had God-given talent that I didn't have. That was one of the moments. And the other one was, I remember over rehearsing in your parents' basement, when you came up and said something like, "Hey man, you mind if I play your guitar a little bit or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And you picked up my guitar and proceeded, to just play freaking out of this world. And I go, shit. I mean, that for me was this moment where, where I kind of wanted to just go home and say, screw this. But instead I went home and said, okay, it's going to be 10 times as hard for me, but, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Well, I think for me is I think I followed the passion that I had for the kind of music that I wanted to do, whereas I know you had, embraced music that was in the community, which was, country and Western music, and you worked at the local KKOJ, the local radio station, and which largely that was their playlist. And look, that was the music that played to the farmers and the people in the area. I had a rock and roll soul for whatever reason, and so even in jazz band, I wanted to rock. When I played guitar, and I got a guitar, I picked up the bass at about age 11, and I remember I got a Hondo 2 Stratocaster from the local music store.
We both did.
Music. Yeah, we both had Hondo 2s. And I remember, I wanted to play riffs and cool chord changes, and I think I'm of the belief that your instrument chooses you, and why the bass? I mean, of all things, growing up in on a farm in Jacksonville, so why a bass guitar? And for me, I remember looking at certainly my Bachman Turner Overdrive Not Fragile record that a friend of ours, John Stolp, in town had, and I remember opening up that gatefold and going, "There's Randy Bachman with a Strat, there's Fred Turner with a Rickenbacker, black 4001, Blair Thorne over there with a Gibson, I guess SG or Les Paul type guitar," and for whatever reason, that bass just called to me, man. I mean, that was the one. And then as I got into Kiss. To me it was about that presence, that larger than life presence that always, to me it was, the music's important, it's important to practice. I came home every day after school, went right in the basement and tried to avoid hard farm work. As we had to do, there's always chores and farm work.
You couldn't avoid it.
No, you couldn't, but I would try to get down there and put some time in every day before my dad would call, "David, we need you outside," and I'd have to go outside and do farm work. And there was always a song in my head, and I remember sitting in the PE class and science class, and I'd be tapping out rhythms, and the teacher would go, "Who's tapping?" And it would always be me.
Or me.
Or you, yeah, exactly. And the two of us were together, it was like double trouble in school. So, but I think, look, music calls to us, and I guess for those of us who are either crazy enough, unthinking enough, or just stubborn enough, we go pursue it. And, I think for you and I, it's a great testimony because we reconnected. It's funny having the coffee store back in Jackson, Minnesota, kind of connected us over things. We've, we cleaned our act up years ago, which connected us with Family Guy.
That's why we look so good.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, here all these years later, and again, it's just great to reconnect with you again in Nashville, of all places.
Yeah, well, it's been home for me my entire adult life, basically. You and I basically did the same thing, which was the day they opened up our cage and said, "You can now leave the farm." We said,
I left 5 days after high school. How long did it take you?
I think it was about 14.
About 14, yeah. By June, we were well planted. The school got out in May of 1983 was our high school year. And Greg Handevitt, who was my dear friend, he was actually the other guy who was, vital to the formation of Megadeth. He was there in our earliest days. I remember after Greg and I had met Dave Mustaine, who lived in the apartment above us, and we went downstairs, and that night Greg just looked at me and goes, "Dude, we got to go play with that guy." And because we loved his music, he had something of a whole other level that was going on in LA. By that time, Van Halen had obviously broken big, but by that time, Motley Crue and Rat and Wasp and these guys had all gotten signed, and Ozzy was getting these musicians out of LA, and it just seemed to me the place to go, and I'm glad I went there. But what Dave was doing, and this band that he had just left that we had not heard of yet, called Metallica, they had just gotten signed, we're just about to, their debut record, Kill 'Em All, was going to come out, and Dave was playing for me and Greg the No Life Till Leather demo. that he had played on, and there was an aggression, kind of a darkness about it that was just hauntingly cool. Like it felt like something you shouldn't be doing, which is why we wanted to do it. Especially being from Jackson, Minnesota.
Absolutely. That was sort of the motto for everything we did back then, for better or worse.
We know we'd be in trouble doing it. Let's go do it. You know?
Oh my goodness. Well, so what we're doing is basically telling a bass story.
Pretty much.
Is this going to be like what you're doing? What will Bass Story be? I read the thing that basically said intimate evening of bass stories, and it's considered a spoken word tour.
It is. It really is a spoken word tour, and it is going to be just this. And I may even do some Q&A with a moderator. What I found with them, just like a clinic when we've done, because the clinic thing is kind of dried up, you know, and clinics were usually like, in my case, Jackson Guitars or my amplifier company, Harkey, would, you know, contact local music stores. And it was a way to help them drive product sales. It was a great way to bring awareness to a local town. Just today we were over at the Guitar Center, and, you know, my picture from the last clinic I had done there was on the wall of the manager's office. And, you know, they're fun to do in music stores, but, you know, music stores are also very busy. They're also trying to do a lot of other business. And so I thought, you know, with Bass Story, to go take this out into a club, into a venue, it's already a setting where people are coming to have a few drinks, hang out, chill, catch some music. And we're in some of the locations, we're putting some of our other EMP label group bands on it. It's a way to help us kind of promote from within, help our other artists be part of this. You know, it's just this, to talk. And, you know, I'm always comfortable having my bass there. You know, it's kind of like a buddy. You know, we've been on the journey together, so to talk about, to be able to play and sort of talk about, you know, almost fill the gaps in of the story by playing the riffs and the bits and pieces of it, and tell stories behind these parts. You know, these songs, you know, as you know, as a songwriter, as a musician, you know, a song starts at a certain place. Maybe it's a riff, maybe it's a, hey, wow, that's cool, I got an idea for that, and you kind of bounce back and forth. But songs go on journeys, you know, before you really, because again, it's almost like the instrument calls to you, the song, I feel like a song calls to you. Like a song, you sort of channel it. And you go on this journey and you kind of use, you know, as the old, you know, saying goes about the statue of David, he just chipped away everything that wasn't David, right. You know, and there's the statue. And I think a song is largely the same way. Because, you know, you can go all these different ways with it, but why does that thing resonate to you so well right now in this moment, and then you record it and then it's captured? There's like a photograph, it's captured forever. And there's a story behind it. I think the story behind the journey to create this riff, to create this song, to create this composition that in our case, you know, has changed lives, you know, millions of people's lives through our catalog of work, is, I just thought it's something that I think at 35 years of Megadeth this year especially, was a really poignant moment in time to just tell some stories and to invite the fans in to be part of it and to do it in an intimate setting. They all get to see this play on the big, you know, TV and stadiums and arenas and that kind of stuff. So this is not that. This is really something to just sit down and be very up close and personal, take questions. You know, as the first Megadeth show we did, I was more fascinated by the audience than they probably were by us. You know, it was always been a very interactive thing with us. It still is to this day.
That's awesome.
And, you know, so to me, fans ask the most engaging questions. You know, I'm there to, if anything, answer their questions, you know, because they've got questions about moments, about particular periods of time with the band, and you know, to be able to sort of bring the music in and to be able to play those little bits and pieces that sort of echo what their questions are, to me, is kind of the ultimate fan experience for them.
Wow. Well, for what it's worth, I would love to be there. And I think that part of what's going to make that so cool, I'm assuming that most of the people that are going to be attending, probably, yeah, they're into Megadeth. But I'm hoping that maybe there's some people there that are into making their own music. And they're going there for inspiration. Right. You know, because, you know, that's the concept. In other words, what I'm seeing is that you might ignite some other fires in some other people.
You know, that's like the best gift we could give back is when, I mean, I remember a couple moments. One, we were in Cleveland, and probably this would have been about 1998, 99, and we were in the elevator. Matchbox 20, who was a pop band that was really breaking big at the time. And guitar player runs in the elevator, he sees Marty Friedman, and he goes, "Oh my God, Marty, I'm a huge fan. Oh my God," like gushing on Marty. And so obviously grew up on Marty's licks, probably both in and outside of Megadeth. But yet here he was, an amazing pop act, songs on the radio, doing that thing. And it was just cool to see how he took an inspiration and went in a whole other direction and did his own thing with it. Mark Tremonti, who's most famous for his work in Creed and Alter Bridge and even the solo project, Tremonti, he's been a huge Megadeth fan, and I have so much fun talking to him because he's such an amazing player. He's done the work, he's put the time in. You can tell he's a practiced, skilled musician. Yet he's gone off and done other, obviously huge multi-platinum level things because he took his inspiration from probably Megadeth and the Big Four, really, and went off and carved his own career and had his own voice. So I think a lot of it is, being inspired is one thing, because, to just copy somebody, and there's some amazing, we have some amazing Megadeth tribute bands out there who, that's kind of the ultimate honor, is when they're up there playing our tunes with the bullet belts and the same instruments, they're replicating a moment, a moment that impacted them. They're, sort of replicating and helping push that out locally. And that's an awesome thing. I'm super proud of these bands that do that. But, as an original artist, for people that want to pursue that, to be inspired by somebody, whoever it is, and then to go out and go make your own mark with your own voice, that's because we're given our own voice. No two voices sound alike with people. And our voice is not only for us vocally, but also through our skills as, on an instrument, whether it's drums, keyboard, guitar, whatever it is. To take that voice and to go out and do something and make your own mark that's an incredible compliment as well.
Cool. So, what's your favorite bass story? Just one little 2-minute story. What really speaks to you?
Jeez, my favorite bass story. I would say, you put me on the spot, so I think the one that just hits me right now is, I would say probably that moment that I begged my mom to buy my first bass, and it had to be a Gibson because on the back of the Kiss records it said Kiss uses Gibson guitars and Pearl drums because they want the best, which we now know was an endorsement. Their manager got them probably some free or discounted guitars that they could smash. So I remember driving to the little town Fairmont, Minnesota, because I found in the local classified ads a Gibson bass. I had no idea what an EDO was. Opened it up and just went, oh my gosh, there it is. It was thin, it was long, it had fat strings, and I just remember being mesmerized. And we bought the bass, it was $150. My dear sweet mother bought it. And then we drove 30 miles back to Jackson, and then another 30 miles to the other town, Worthington, to Worthington Music, and bought the little Fender bass amp. And I plugged it in, and it didn't sound anything like Kiss. I was very disappointed. But I didn't know. I remember I had a sheet that had chords on it, and I'm like, you don't play one string at a time. I think on a bass. I don't know why they gave me this chord sheet, And I would call everybody in town. I was called the local church worship musician. He was an acoustic guitar player. I'm like, please come out, anybody to play with, anybody. And my brother had a couple buddies, Mike and Kent, and we put a band together called Headstone, which it was EC High Voltage, which stood for Ellefson Cushman High Voltage. We're just trying to think of the most metal names we could. And that band morphed into Headstone, and then it morphed into Taz and Killers, and then finally it moved out to LA. But, that first bass, I'm a firm believer that a bass needs to look cool. Or a guitar. It needs to look cool because you want to pick it up and play it. Some of my favorite basses I have at home, I leave them sitting out because when I walk by them, I want to pick them up and play them.
Yeah, my wife doesn't understand that.
Yeah, so having a guitar, it's one thing to hang guitars on the wall because it kind of decorates the house. I'm not a collector per se. Every bass I have has a story. And I have it because either I picked it up and it just felt good. Oftentimes I pick it up and riffs just fall out. And when I pick up a bass, I was at a replay guitar exchange in Tampa, and I was playing. I had a Rickenbacker 4001, and I haven't had one since before that BC Rich back in. I was probably 13, 14 years old. And I had a red one. It was used, and I don't even know what happened to it. And I don't know what happened to the EBO either. I can't remember where it went. These basses have just kind of disappeared out of my life. But I remember, and I was just playing on this bass, and I went, "Oh my gosh, this thing is awesome!" And then I picked up a Steve Harris signature model Fender P bass. Same thing. I just was like riffing and playing, so I immediately acquired those two basses. And it's fun to have that experience. I like being, I endorse Jackson, and they're wonderful for me, and we've developed some incredible signature products together, but I'm still a bass geek, I love to walk into a store and find something and go, oh my gosh, I gotta have it. There's nothing cooler than the I gotta have it moment.
Well, you do a lot of things, but, I mean, honestly, the sound of Megadeth bass is very much a Jackson.
Very much, yeah. I mean, the first two records, I actually was the BC Rich. In fact, that one that I played the bass solo on, I think I used that one on the Killing Is My Business record, so our very first, record that we cut for Combat Records. And then on Peace Cells, I used, there was a red BC Rich Mockingbird, and then the one that's got the fighter jet paint on it, which is now a fan. I sold it in a Megadeth auction we did, and a fan bought it and has put it in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland.
So there is a BC Rich that will...
Yeah, exactly, that one, yeah. And that is cool because he was so mad that there was no Megadeth and no heavy metal in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that there's an arrangement, I think it's like a kind of a permanent loan kind of thing or a consignment thing that you can place it there. And he started this whole, now there's a whole dime bag, there's all kinds of heavy metal stuff there because he was adamant about that.
As it should be.
Which is cool because again, he could have sold that bass and certainly made a lot of money, but he did it in the name of of my name and Megadeth and heavy metal. He did a good thing with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and kicked off this whole display for metal there.
Which is so much more valuable than money.
Yeah, it is. But you're right. And then after that, then the next records after that, the next several were all Jackson, and the Jackson into the Harkey amp. I mean, that just really defined my tone. I think that kind of, as you know, as a player, your tone is always in your hands. It's always in your fingers. But when we look for instruments, for strings, for picks, for pickups, the little details that just kind of help. It's kind of like salt and pepper, it just sort of helps it.
And honestly, the way I always look at it, I make pickups, that's a large part of what I do these days, but the way I look at it is honestly, with an instrument that's right, it plays you as much as you play it. Like you said, it leads you in all these directions, and you find yourself playing things that are completely different because the guitar brought you there.
Today I was in the studio and there were two Les Pauls, and one I just grabbed from the guitar player, handed it to me so I could just chunk out some riffs on something. And everybody was like, wow, that's super cool, it's great, it great. It was awesome. It was a gold top, and he'd actually just bought it from Guitar Center today. And then a little while later, the producer, Billy, says, here, play this other Les Paul, I want you to double that part. And as soon as I picked that guitar up, again, two Les Pauls, both by the same manufacturer. I picked it up and I just was chunking away on it. We dialed up the tone, and all of a sudden, a whole new set of ideas and riffs came out. Because you're right, the instruments. I think the right instrument brings music out of you. You're not bringing music out of the guitar as much as that guitar is just bringing things out of you. I think every chef is like that. I think painters. I think mechanics are like that. When you find the right tools, they just bring the craft out of you.
How far have you strayed? Have you went all the way to, say, the ukulele bass and things like that?
I haven't. I've played some of those. The little mini uke bass, whatever that is, and it's a cool idea. It's great, but for me, I don't know. That hasn't come to me. Like I never did the
quite go that far.
I never did the Steinberger thing, the headless bass, because again, a bass it has to bring a tone out of me. Like I'll pick up a Spectre. I got a Spectre that I bought from a kid in LA years ago out of the recycler classified ads, and I just played it. I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is awesome. It just brought.
How about fretless?
I have a fretless that my brother-in-law bought me as a gift, a Fender jazz bass, white one, super cool. I put some EMG pickups in it. I don't play it a lot. I don't have really a home for it. The fretless is a very peculiar. Again, it's like that paint,
It really, I've got a couple of fretless basses, and one acoustic, one electric, and they really bring you to different places.
Totally.
You find yourself playing like a whole other person on a fretless instrument.
The Padula, probably the Buzz bass, is probably my absolute favorite. I mean, that's a bass that I picked up and played from time to time, and that just takes you to different places. It's like a sitar, you know. It's got that just thing in it.
I have oh gosh, the name escapes me right now. The traditional Greek instrument, a bouzouki.
Yeah, right.
And talk about an instrument that will just all of a sudden bring you. It's like your entire mind changes when you start playing that. You become different from the inside.
Yeah.
Strangely enough. So. Yeah.
You know, I think it too. Today I was sitting here and the leader of this sort of band that I'm working with here in Nashville. He just sat down and did some incredible nylon string work. You know, and it's fun to be a fan of someone playing. You know, Kiko, who's now in Megadeth, he's that guy. Like, he'll sit down, he just pursues music. Just comes to him. He'll walk into a lobby of a hotel and there'll be a piano. He'll just sit down and start playing. And he's, you know, schooled in jazz music. And it's interesting that you just hear him play over changes. One day at a rehearsal in Oslo, Norway, you know, there's a piano in the rehearsal room. So in between Jam and Megadeth tunes, he started kind of riffing, kind of going through chord changes, and I play bass parts. So it's kind of having these smoky jazz moments, you know what I mean? And just, you know, it's different accompaniment around you will inspire you to play different, you know, to take me back to start looking at some old jazz studies. And I'm not really a fan of jazz music, I admit. I started getting into jazz music years ago as a kid because, you know, I grew up on mostly 70s hard rock and rock and roll music. And I noticed, I went to go see Maynard Ferguson play at the neighboring town of Wyndham, and this is right as he was, he recorded the Rocky theme, he was a trumpet player. And his drummer was Peter Erskine, who then went on to play in Weather Report. His bass player was Gordon Johnson, who was an incredible player out of Minneapolis. And his band, I'd never seen anything like this. I mean, I was starting to get into Rush and some very progressive rock things. But when I saw a legitimate, bona fide jazz artist play, I was just blown away at the next level of accomplishments of these guys. And so I then started to started to look at jazz music. And of course, Jaco Pastorius had come out around that time. But probably my favorite guy in that genre is probably Al Di Meola, because he was more like a shredder, had more kind of a hard rock electric guitar tone. Anthony Jackson, his bass player, was an incredible player. The Electric Rendezvous album is probably my favorite of that. And it's just interesting how I pursued jazz music mostly because that's where all the great bass players were, was over in jazz music. And it's ironic that I remember back around 2010 when Frank Bello from Anthrax and I got together and we started doing some Harkey bass clinics together because he was going through some transitions, so we brought him over to Harkey. We started doing some clinics, and we said, hey, why don't we write some tunes together so we just got some songs to play, kind of modeling after what Victor Wooten and Steve Bailey had done with their Bass Extremes bass dual things they were doing. And so he and I started writing, and then we ended up forming a band called Altitudes and Attitude, and that led us on a whole other musical journey together, two bass players. To a point that we weren't even playing bass anymore. We were playing guitar together and picking up the 8-string bass and all these different things. And now, of course, Jackson made me we developed a 10-string bass, which is basically 8-string, but because I'm a 5-string player, we added the extra string. And some of the details of that is interesting because, as a pick player, big issue with that was how to make the bridge, because there was some, in order to really make an 8-string, or in this case a 10-string instrument, I think probably the only 10-string bass that I know of ever in the world. There might be some other ones around there, but the big thing was which side of the string is the octave string. And for me as a pick player, I want to hit the octave string first. If I was a finger player, you'd put the octave string on the other side so that you would kind of rake across it. So we had to get a bridge developed. We had to make a bridge, and that took a few months. And then we decided on the headstock. I didn't want to use the angled headstock because the tension would have been wrong in the neck. So we got it nice and dialed up, and have this amazing instrument now. So when Frank and I are going to go out in a few months and do some performing with that, with Altitudes and Attitude, now I've got a real proper bass for me.
And is that a one-off, or will that be available to the public?
Well, it's funny. I put it out on social media. Hey, do you want to see more of these? And the response was amazing. Most people said, "Hey, how about at least an 8-string version? Because then at least this way, they can get a Jackson version." And so I've been talking to Jackson about that. Even if we just offer it as a custom shop model, you know, those you sell 1s and 2s of them. I mean, it's a very small number, so it's a pretty huge financial ramp up to create that instrument. But at least my 10-string is kind of the prototype, you know what I mean? So it's we've kind of done the hard work of doing the research and making the prototype, and I mean they nailed it. I mean the custom shop over in Corona, where Jackson and Fender it's incredible. They just do amazing work, and they're rocker dudes, so they get it. They kind of know what we want.
Yeah, I've been working with Fender a lot lately. They're good people, amazing. Love the new LA office too. I don't know if you've swung by there yet, but man, the vibe in that place is so cool. And we're not ready to talk about it, but we can at least say that there will be some new Dave Ellefson signature Jacksons on the horizon as well.
Horizon. You know, I'm always looking for what is the next. Where's there a hole in the line? Like, where's the void? You know, Jackson has always been a very high octane, high performance instrument, and it should stay that. It should remain that. But you know, even the very first one that I got, the concert bass, that I went out and had Grover Jackson make for me. The thing I liked about it is it's a performance bass. It's got a little bit of a smaller body. It's contoured in a way that it's meant to be. You know, it's a great stage bass. You know, the action has always been super fast, and these sort of flatter necks that play really fast. And for me, as a pick player, it's got the right tone for what I need in a very high performance musical settings that I play in. So to me, there's some Jacksonisms that I want to leave alone, you know. But as time goes on, you know, pickups are different now, better, I'd like to think. You know, bridge designs, Jackson's developed some new bridges, some new technologies in the instruments. So I'm always looking for the things that we need to fill in, and also things that I might need. You know, when I'm doing different either studio work or road work, whatever. You know, things that will fill my needs as well. That's why we've developed all these signature concert basses, the 5-string. I mean, I essentially invented the 5-string bass for Jackson when we recorded the Rust in Peace album, because I recorded the song Hangar 18, which is essentially what today would probably be a drop D tuning. I recorded it like that for the first half of it, and then we stopped, I tuned up, and then we punched in, and I recorded the back half. Me and the producer, Mike Plank, went around LA trying to find a 5-string bass, because we'd already recorded the entire record, so now it was not only the part, but now we had the tone match. You know, and Bartolini was a popular pickup back then, but, you know, Music Man and Tobias and some of the other instruments that were out at that time, significantly different tone. And so we just decided to do the poor man's, you know, drop tuning thing before anybody was doing drop tuning. But then I went, oh my God, I got to go on tour now to support this album. And so that's when I called Jackson, and we hodgepodged a 5-string bass together, and that essentially became my first signature model.
Well, that's a new bass story.
Yeah.
The first Jackson 5-string bass was yours?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, one day my daughter said something. She goes, you know, Dad, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, you know. And she was just a teenager. I'm like, I don't know where you came up with that, but that's a good line. I'm going to steal that. And that really has been, you know, a big part of my equipment, is just, you know, having a, you know, you see a need and you sort of develop a sound. And, you know, the Kelly Bird instrument years ago, in 1992 on the Countdown to Extinction Megadeth album, I wanted a kind of a low slung rock and roll bass, so we did kind of like a Gibson Thunderbird style with a Jackson headstock. And so I took that concept further. I wanted to make it more Jackson-like, so I added the Kelly Bird, which is a proprietary, you know, look that they have, and so we added that bottom horn. Kept some of those, you know, kind of Thunderbird isms about it. I didn't want to, you know, steal anything from anybody, and obviously the headstock is kind of the signature of a guitar company. So that's how we created the Kelly Birds, the 4- and 5-string. And then the current model that I have now, I wanted to update it. I just thought, you know, let's update the look of this a little bit. It's kind of a very, kind of almost an old-fashioned looking bass right now, the concert bass. So we put some divots.
Old-fashioned as in 80s.
Yeah, 80s. Yeah, exactly. So we put some divots and some, you know, some different you know, some different contour stylings to it, and that's how we created that one. So, and of course, like I said, the 10-string, I have a record with Frank, with Altitudes and Attitude coming out next year. So I have a need, I need a bass, you know, so it's, I try to kind of keep about, you know, sometimes a need will come up and I kind of try to look 12 to 18 months down the road when I'm designing these things with Jackson, because I know that's how long it takes to cut a tree down and carve a bass and figure it out and make some samples and see if we can pull it off.
Yeah, they are still made of wood, aren't they?
They are. It's unbelievable.
Well, cool. It's probably we're looking at January-ish or something like that, and there'll be something new that we can talk about then as well.
Probably, yeah. Sometime, and again, part of that will be based on Jackson's schedule. You know, the NAMM shows kind of become this sort of the calling card of either winter NAMM or summer NAMM, January. Or
new drop products.
Yeah, exactly. So whenever it's right for their timeline, but you know, new albums coming out, I want to have photos with these new things in them because I think it's kind of a good way to inspire and see.
Well, cool. And circling all the way back to BASSTORY, as we're sitting here, it's the end of August. BASSTORY begins the end of next month, September, right?
Yeah, in about 3 weeks it's coming up. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll put dates and the website up if people want to look at that. I believe it's very limited in the number of venues, the number of seats. Right. As far as we know, there are still seats available. What is it, 6 shows in the United States?
Yeah, see, there's 3 in the Northwest, Portland, Spokane, Seattle, and then we're going down to Texas and doing San Antonio and Houston. And then we just added 4 shows in the Midwest, so we can do a Midwest BASSTORY. And it's nice. Yeah, exactly. And it's cool because Mankato, by the way, and my good friend Greg Hanovitt will be joining us with his band Kublai. And what's nice about that too, we're also adding a couple of EMP acts. Green Death and Wrath have new records coming out on Combat Records, which is now under our EMP umbrella, so we're going to put them on those dates with us. And then
so are you going to follow up the band, or is the band going to follow up you?
You know, a little bit of both. A little bit of both. You know, again, it's nice to kick it off and warm the crowd up and get everybody going, and then for me to come out and do my thing. And there's a couple of situations where I'm going to bring some guests up from the audience and maybe do a little jamming and some playing, and then be able to close up the night in certain situations with a backing band, so we can do some playing and riff out some tunes together.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So folks know a little bit more about what they're getting into then.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't glean all that off the website.
Yeah. So and then I'm going to go to Europe, and I'm going to do about 2 weeks over there. And those are largely kind of, some of them are more master class in music conservatories and music schools over there, like in the case of in the UK. They're like that, and so you know, a lot of different settings, and that's why I say everyone is going to be different. And it's kind of, you know, with a band, with a show, you walk in, you know your songs, you know your repertoire. Granted, every night the stage might be different, you know, and the venue's a little different, but you kind of know what your routine is. And I'm going to walk in largely having a bit of a repertoire, but I want them to be fluid. I want them to be kind of loosey-goosey.
Kind of like we are right now.
Yeah, you know, to the degree, because, you know, you know, I'm not a guy who likes to cage life, you know. I've kind of let go of trying to be that control freak guy, you know. I mean, you try to...
Doesn't work anyway.
Yeah, you try to, you know, you try to, you know, kind of, you know, I guess, put some, you know, outline around things, you know. But to me, man, life is about letting it just be the wild animal that it is, you know. And especially at shows and with fans, and you know, we're a wild bunch, and we're cut from the same cloth, and we're part of the same tribe, you know. So I figure, you know, that's already home. So
enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride, man. Let it be what it is.
Oh, cool. Well, Dave, I tell you what, man. Yeah. It is so freaking fun to talk to you.
Likewise.
And glad to have had you as a music buddy for really my entire adult life and more.
Yes.
So I feel quite confident in actually saying to folks out there that that if they are lucky enough to be able to actually be in the audience at one of these intimate events, it's going to be freaking awesome. So, nice. By all means, go enjoy yourself, and glad that y'all stuck with us here for all this time.
Thanks for bassing out with us here on BassMusicianMagazine.com.